The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, silent, empty, and unforgiving. A convoy of armored vehicles carved its way through the narrow canyon, tires crunching against gravel, engines humming low like a warning beneath the surface. The towering rock walls on both sides blocked out most of the sky, leaving only a thin strip of blinding sunlight above. Inside the second vehicle, Sergeant Emily Carter sat still, her eyes scanning every inch of the terrain. Something felt wrong. Not just wrong, off. She had learned long ago to trust that feeling. It had saved her life more times than she could count. Her finger tapped lightly against her rifle. Her breathing was calm, controlled, but her senses were on fire. "Convoy, reduce speed," she said into the comms. The driver glanced at her. "You see something, Sergeant?" "No," she replied quietly. "That's the problem." Silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The canyon was too perfect, too quiet. No movement, no signs of life, not even birds. Emily's jaw tightened. "This is a kill zone," she whispered under her breath. Before she could say another word, boom! The explosion ripped through the front vehicle, turning it into a fireball of twisted metal. The shockwave slammed into the rest of the convoy, sending dust and debris flying through the air. "Ambush! Ambush!" voices screamed over the comms. Gunfire erupted instantly. Bullets rained down from above like a storm, tearing into the vehicles, shattering glass, punching through armor. "Move! Get out!" Emily shouted. She kicked the door open and dove out just as another explosion hit behind her. The heat scorched her back as she hit the ground hard, rolling behind a chunk of broken rock for cover. Her ears rang violently. For a moment, everything was muffled. Then, the chaos came rushing back. Screams, gunfire, explosions. Emily forced herself up, ignoring the dizziness. Her training took over like a switch flipping inside her brain. Focus, assess, act. She peeked over cover. Enemy fighters lined the cliffs above them, perfectly positioned, hidden until the exact moment of attack. "They've got the high ground," someone yelled. "Return fire," Emily commanded. She leaned out and fired, controlled bursts, precise shots. One enemy dropped, then another. But it wasn't enough. They were outnumbered, outpositioned, outmatched. A soldier nearby cried out as he was hit, collapsing beside a burning vehicle. Emily clenched her teeth. "Stay with me! Medic!" But even the medics were pinned down. The canyon had become a trap, a slaughterhouse. Her heart pounded, but her mind stayed sharp. Think, think, think. Her eyes scanned the terrain again, faster this time, through the smoke, through the chaos, and then she saw it. A narrow, jagged path along the side of the canyon wall, almost invisible, steep, dangerous, but it led up, straight to the enemy's position, her only chance. She turned to her team. "We can't stay here. We'll be wiped out." "So what's the plan?" a soldier shouted. Emily pointed upward. "I take the high ground." They stared at her like she was crazy. "That path? You won't make it." "I don't have to make it. I just have to cause enough damage." A pause. Then, quietly, "That's suicide, Sergeant." Emily met his eyes. "No," she said. "This is survival." Before anyone could argue, she moved. Fast, low, focused. She sprinted across open ground as bullets ripped through the air around her. One struck the rock inches from her face, spraying dust into her eyes. She didn't stop. Reaching the base of the cliff, she grabbed onto the jagged stone and began to climb. Every movement was a fight. Her boots slipped, her hands scraped and bled against the sharp edges. Gunfire followed her. They had seen her. A bullet slammed into the rock near her head. Another grazed her arm, tearing through fabric and flesh. She gasped, but kept climbing. Pain was irrelevant. Fear was irrelevant. Only one thing mattered: get to the top. Her muscles screamed as she pulled herself higher. The world below blurred into chaos, but she blocked it completely out. Step by step, grip by grip, closer, closer. Finally, she reached the ledge. With one last surge of strength, Emily pulled herself over the edge and rolled onto solid ground. For a split second, silence. The enemy fighters turned toward her, their faces frozen in shock. They never expected this. A single soldier climbing straight into their position. Emily didn't hesitate. She raised her rifle and fired. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3. Each one found its target. The nearest enemies dropped instantly. Panic spread among them. "She's up here! Take her down!" Gunfire exploded around her again. Emily moved fast, diving behind a rock as bullets tore into the ground where she had been seconds before. She reloaded quickly, her hands steady despite the chaos. Then she struck again. Pop out, fire, move. Pop out, fire, move. She became unpredictable, relentless, a ghost in the battlefield. One by one, the enemies began to fall, but there were too many, far too many. They started to regroup, spreading out, cutting off her angles, flanking her, surrounding her. Emily's breathing grew heavier. Her ammo was running low. Her arm burned from the bullet wound. Dust filled her lungs. And slowly, the realization hit. She was alone, completely alone. No backup, no support, no way down. Only enemies closing in from every direction. Footsteps approached. Voices shouted in a language she didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. They were hunting her. Emily leaned back against the rock, gripping her rifle tightly. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. This was it. The moment where most soldiers break. The moment where fear takes over. But not her. Not Emily Carter. She closed her eyes for a brief second and exhaled slowly. Then she opened them again, and something had changed. The fear was gone, replaced by something colder, sharper, more dangerous. "If I'm going down," she whispered, checking her last magazine, "you're all going down with me." She stood up, stepped out from cover, and faced the enemy head-on. In that moment, she wasn't just a soldier anymore. She wasn't just surviving. She was transforming into something unstoppable, something the enemy never saw coming, a force of pure will, a fighter who refused to fall, a storm in human form, a one-woman army. The wind howled across the canyon ridge, carrying dust, smoke, and the scent of death. Sergeant Emily Carter stood exposed for a fraction of a second, just long enough for the enemy to see her. Then all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions. Bullets sliced through the air, smashing into the rocks around her. Emily dropped instantly, rolling behind cover as stone fragments exploded against her face. Too many. They were adapting. "They're tightening the circle," she muttered under her breath. Her mind raced. This wasn't just an ambush anymore. It was a hunt, and she was the prey. No. She clenched her jaw. Not prey. Not yet. Emily quickly checked her gear. 1 rifle, low ammo, 1 sidearm, 2 magazines left, 2 grenades, a combat knife. That was it. No radio backup, no air support, no second chances. Below her, faint echoes of gunfire still rang out. Her team was alive, but barely holding on. Every second she survived up here was a second they had to escape. Her mission had changed. This wasn't about completing the objective anymore. This was about buying time. Emily peeked over the rock. 5 enemies moving in from the left, 3 from the right, more behind. They were closing fast, coordinated, careful. They had learned. "Good," she whispered. "Makes this interesting." She pulled the pin on a grenade, waited, then tossed it toward the left flank. Boom! The explosion shattered the silence, sending bodies flying and dust into the air. Before the smoke cleared, Emily moved. She sprinted out of cover, firing rapidly at the right flank. 2 enemies dropped before they could react. The third raised his weapon. Too slow. Emily fired. He fell. But now they knew exactly where she was. "Over there! Don't let her move!" More gunfire. Emily ducked and ran, weaving between rocks, her boots slipping on loose gravel. She could feel the battlefield shrinking around her. They were hurting her, pushing her toward the edge. Smart. Very smart. She reached a narrow ridge and stopped just short of the drop. A deep cliff fell away beneath her, hundreds of feet down. No escape that way. Footsteps approached behind her. Emily turned, raising her rifle. Click. Empty. "Of course," she muttered. She dropped her rifle and drew her sidearm just as 2 enemies rushed her. Bang! Bang! Both went down, but more were coming. Always more. Her breathing grew heavier now, her movements slightly slower. Fatigue was creeping in, but she refused to let it take control. Not now, not here. A shadow moved to her right. Emily spun. An enemy lunged at her, tackling her to the ground. Her gun slid from her hand, skidding across the dirt. The 2 struggled, grappling violently. He was stronger. He tried to pin her arms, reaching for his knife. Emily reacted instantly. She drove her knee into his side, once, twice, then slammed her head forward. Crack! The man staggered. That was enough. Emily twisted free, grabbed her combat knife, and struck. Fast, precise, final. The body fell beside her. She didn't even look at it. No time. Never time. She scrambled to her feet, grabbing her pistol again. But now they were everywhere. Enemies emerged from behind rocks, from the ridge, from every direction. Guns raised, locked on her. For a moment, everything slowed. The wind, the noise, even her heartbeat. This was the end. Outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded. A lesser soldier might have surrendered. Another might have panicked. But Emily Carter just smiled. A small, defiant smile. "You picked the wrong soldier," she said quietly. Her hand slowly reached into her vest. The enemy shouted, thinking she was going for another weapon. "Drop it! Drop it!" Too late. She pulled out her last grenade, pulled the pin, and charged forward. For a split second, confusion spread through the enemy ranks. Then, fear. They scattered. But Emily didn't stop. She threw the grenade straight into the largest group. Boom! The explosion ripped through them, sending shockwaves across the ridge. Dust, smoke, chaos. And in that chaos, Emily vanished. She dove behind a rock formation just before bullets tore through the space where she had been. Coughing, breathing hard, she pressed herself against the stone. Her vision blurred for a second. Her body was reaching its limit. Blood from her arm wound had soaked through her sleeve. Her hands trembled slightly, but her mind, still sharp, still fighting. She peeked out again. Fewer enemies now, but still enough to kill her. Then something changed. A distant sound, faint at first, then louder. Engines. Emily's eyes widened slightly. "Come on," she whispered. Below in the canyon, armored vehicles appeared through the dust. Reinforcements. Her team had made it, and help had arrived. The enemy heard it too. Their formation broke. Some turned to retreat, others hesitated. That was their mistake. Emily stepped out of cover one last time, raised her pistol, and fired. One shot at a time. Each one deliberate, each one deadly. The remaining enemies fell or fled. Within minutes, it was over. The ridge fell silent again. Emily stood there, barely able to stay on her feet. The wind blew past her, carrying away the last traces of smoke. She looked down at the canyon. Her team was safe. The convoy, what was left of it, was being secured. They had survived because of her. Emily took one step forward, then another. But her legs gave out. She dropped to one knee, then to the ground, exhausted, wounded, but alive. As the sound of approaching helicopters filled the sky, Emily Carter allowed herself one final thought before everything faded to black. She had faced an army and won. Darkness. Heavy. Endless. Silent. Sergeant Emily Carter floated somewhere between consciousness and nothingness. Faint echoes drifted through the void. Distant voices, the rhythmic beeping of machines, the low hum of something mechanical. Then, pain. Sharp, burning, real. Her eyes snapped open. Bright white light flooded her vision as she gasped, instinctively trying to sit up. "Easy, easy, Sergeant, don't move." A voice, close, familiar. Emily blinked, her vision slowly focusing, the sterile white ceiling above her, the faint smell of antiseptic, a medical tent. She was alive. "You're safe," the medic said, gently pushing her back down. "You've been out for almost 18 hours. Emily's throat was dry. "My team," she croaked. "They made it, thanks to you." Relief washed over her, but it didn't last long because something felt wrong. Her body ached, her arm tightly bandaged, her ribs screaming with every breath. But it wasn't just the pain, it was the memory, the ambush. Too perfect, too precise. Emily turned her head slightly. Outside the tent, soldiers moved quickly, voices tense. Helicopters landed and took off, carrying the wounded. War hadn't stopped. It never did. "Sergeant Carter." A new voice cut through the noise. Calm, controlled, authoritative. Emily looked toward the entrance. A man stepped inside, clean uniform, sharp posture, eyes that missed nothing. Colonel Hayes. She immediately tried to sit up straighter despite the pain. "At ease," he said. "You've done more than enough." Emily studied him carefully. "Sir, the ambush, it wasn't random." Hayes didn't respond immediately. That was all the answer she needed. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "They knew exactly where we'd be." "They got lucky," he replied. "No," Emily said firmly. "That wasn't luck. That was intel." Silence filled the tent. For a moment, the distant sounds of war faded away. Hayes stepped closer. "You're a soldier, Sergeant. Your job is to complete the mission, not question it." "My team almost died," she shot back. "That is my job." Their eyes locked. Tension. Unspoken truths hanging in the air. Finally, Hayes exhaled slowly. "There are things happening in this war you don't understand." "Then help me understand," Emily replied. Another pause. Then, "We had a leak." The words hit like a bullet. Emily's heart skipped. "Inside our unit? Possibly. Higher." Her mind raced. A leak meant one thing: betrayal. "Someone fed our route," she said. Hayes nodded once. "And we don't know who." Emily clenched her fists, ignoring the pain. Her team, the convoy, the soldiers who didn't make it, all because someone chose to betray them. "Why tell me this?" she asked. "Because," Hayes said, his voice lowering, "you weren't supposed to survive that ambush." The room went cold. Emily stared at him. "What?" Hayes stepped even closer, his tone deadly serious. "Whoever set that trap expected total casualties. No survivors, no witnesses." A chill ran down her spine. "But you survived," he continued, "and not just survived, you dismantled their entire operation." Emily said nothing. Her thoughts were already moving ahead, piecing it together. "If there's a leak," she said slowly, "then they know I'm alive." Hayes didn't answer. He didn't need to. Her jaw tightened. That meant one thing. She wasn't safe. None of them were. "They'll try again," she said. Yes. Emily swung her legs off the bed, ignoring the medic's protest. Sergeant, you're not cleared. I don't care, she snapped, standing up unsteadily. Pain shot through her body, but she forced herself to stay upright. This isn't over. Hayes watched her carefully. What are you thinking? Emily grabbed her gear from the nearby table, checking her weapon with practiced efficiency. I'm thinking, she said, loading a magazine with slow, deliberate movements, we stop waiting to be attacked and start what? Her eyes hardened. Start hunting. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the base. Somewhere out there, an enemy wasn't just fighting them, they were watching them, manipulating them, waiting. Emily stepped out of the tent, the cool air hitting her face. Every sound felt sharper now, every movement more important. This wasn't just a battlefield anymore. It was a game, and someone behind the scenes was pulling the strings. But they made one mistake. They left her alive. Hayes followed her outside. If we move on this, it won't be official. Emily didn't stop walking. Good. No backup, no guarantees. Emily picked up a rifle, slinging it over her shoulder. I worked better that way. Hayes allowed himself a faint smile. I was hoping you'd say that. He handed her a small device. A tracker? Encrypted intel. We traced a signal linked to the ambush. It's coming from a location about 20 miles east. Emily looked at the screen. A blinking dot in the middle of nowhere. Perfect. A trap or a lead? Either way, she was going. When do we move? She asked. Hayes met her gaze. Tonight. Emily nodded once. No hesitation, no fear. As darkness began to fall over the desert, she prepared for what was coming next. This time, it wouldn't be about survival. It would be about truth, about revenge, about ending the threats once and for all. She checked her weapon one last time, her expression calm but deadly focused. Whoever set that ambush, she whispered, I'm coming for you. In the distance, thunder rumbled across the horizon. A storm was building, and this time, Emily Carter wasn't caught in it. She was the storm. Night had fallen. The desert transformed into a cold, silent battlefield under a sky filled with distant stars. A faint wind carried sand across the ground, erasing footprints, hiding movements, concealing danger. Perfect conditions for a hunt. Sergeant Emily Carter moved like a shadow through the darkness, her body low, her steps precise. Every breath was controlled, every sense was alert. Ahead of her, in the distance, a dim glow. Lights, structures, the source of the signal, the place where it all began. She stopped behind a ridge and raised her binoculars. A hidden compound, guards patrolling, vehicles parked in tight formation, armed men positioned at key points. Not random fighters, organized, disciplined. This was bigger than an ambush, much bigger. Emily lowered the binoculars, her expression cold. This is it, she whispered. A voice crackled softly in her earpiece. Confirm visual. Confirmed, she replied. Multiple hostiles, heavy presence. Colonel Hayes' voice came through, low and steady. We still have time to call this in. Let a full unit handle it. Emily watched as two guards crossed paths, their movements predictable. They had time when they set the trap, she said quietly. They don't get more now. A pause. Then, understood, Hayes said. You're on your own, Carter. She smirked faintly. Just how I like it. The comms went silent. Emily took a deep breath and moved. She circled the compound, studying patterns, counting guards, identifying blind spots. Every detail mattered. One mistake, and it would be over. She reached the outer perimeter fence, barbed wire, old, weak, perfect. With careful precision, she cut through a section and slipped inside without a sound. Now she was inside enemy territory, alone, again. A guard approached from the left. Emily moved fast, silent, deadly. Her hand covered his mouth as she pulled him back into the shadows. One swift motion, one quiet strike, and it was over. She lowered the body gently to the ground. No noise, no trace. She continued forward. Tent after tent, crates of weapons, communication equipment. This wasn't just a base, it was a command center. Her suspicion grew stronger. Someone had been coordinating attacks from here, someone important. Suddenly, voices ahead. Emily froze, pressing herself against a wall. Two men stood near a lit tent, talking. She couldn't understand every word, but one thing stood out. Coordinates, routes, future targets. Her grip tightened on her weapon. More attacks planned, more soldiers walking into traps. Not if she could stop it. She circled the compound, studying patterns, staying in the shadows. Inside the tent, a larger figure stood over a table covered in maps and screens. Calm, focused, in control. The leader. Emily's heart slowed. This was the one pulling the strings, the one responsible. She slipped inside silently, weapon raised. "Step away from the table," she said coldly. The man froze. Slowly, he turned. His face was calm, almost unsurprised. "You're the survivor," he said. Emily's eyes narrowed. "You knew I'd come." "I was hoping you would." Something about his voice. Confident. Too confident. "Drop your weapon," she ordered. But instead of obeying, he smiled and pressed a button. Suddenly, footsteps outside, fast, surrounding the tent. Emily's jaw tightened. "Backup plan?" she said. "No," he replied calmly. "Insurance." The tent was surrounded. Again. But this time, Emily didn't panic. She stepped closer, her weapon steady. "You set the ambush?" "Yes. You killed my team. They were necessary losses." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "You're not a soldier. You're a coward hiding behind others." He chuckled softly. "This war isn't won by soldiers. It's won by those willing to make difficult decisions." Emily's voice turned ice cold. "You mean betray your own." For the first time, he didn't respond. That was all her confirmation she needed. "You're one of us," she said quietly. Silence. Then, yes. The word hit harder than any bullet. An insider, a traitor. Everything suddenly made sense. The intel leaks, the perfect ambush, the impossible coordination. It wasn't the enemy. It was betrayal from within. "You chose the wrong side," Emily said. "No," he replied. "I chose the winning side." Gunfire erupted outside. The tent shook as bullets tore through the fabric. The situation was collapsing fast. Emily made a decision. In a split second, she lunged forward. The traitor reached for a weapon. Too slow. Emily knocked him back, disarming him with brutal force. The two struggled, crashing into the table, maps scattering everywhere. He fought hard, but Emily fought harder, fueled by anger, by loss, by everything he had taken. With one final strike, she overpowered him, pinned him down, weapon aimed directly at his chest. "End of the line," she said. He looked up at her and smiled. Too late. Emily's eyes flicked towards the table. A blinking device. Explosives. The entire compound. Rigged. Her heart raced. "How long?" she demanded. He laughed weakly. "Not long enough for you." Emily made her choice. No hesitation. She struck him unconscious, then grabbed the device. Seconds. Only seconds. She scanned it quickly. Wires, timer, trigger. No time for perfection, just instinct, just skill. Her hands moved fast, cutting one wire, then another. The timer froze. Silence. For a moment, everything stopped. Then, gunfire outside resumed. Emily grabbed her rifle and moved. Fast, aggressive, relentless. She burst out of the tent, catching the surrounding enemies off guard. One by one, she took them down. Precise, controlled, unstoppable. Within minutes, it was over. The compound fell silent. Smoke rose into the night sky, and in the center of it all, Emily Carter stood alone, breathing hard, covered in dust, sweat, and battle scars, but alive, victorious. Hours later, as helicopters arrived and troops secured the area, Colonel Hayes approached her. "It's done," he said. Emily nodded, staring out at the desert. "The leak is over." Hayes studied her for a moment. "You saved a lot of lives tonight." Emily didn't respond immediately. Her eyes reflected everything she had been through, everything she had lost. "This isn't about being a hero," she said quietly. "It never was." She turned and walked towards the extraction point, alone, strong, unbreakable. Because in a war filled with chaos, betrayal, and darkness, one thing remained true. When everything falls apart, when the odds are impossible, when there's no one left to fight, there will always be someone who stands. And this time, that someone was a one-woman army.